Go ahead.
Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Friday, June 24th, 2022. It is 9:32 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Menser in the boardroom, and Commissioner Gary Edwards joining me via Zoom. In the boardroom as well, we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and do we have Robin and
Robin, she just.
Okay, and we have Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, as well as many other staff from Financial Services joining us via Zoom. The topic on today's agenda is budget and its finance internal rate presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is, I believe, the third briefing this week the board has received related to internal rates. And this is specifically related to the Auditor's Office Financial Services. So at this point, Robin, any additional perspective on this?
Thank you, Ramiro. Good morning, Commissioners. And as Ramiro said, this is part 3 of your review of internal service rates. This last piece, the cost allocation plan for internal services is a little different than the ones that you saw already from Central Services, Information Technology Department, and Human Resources. And this is different in that those other offices operate out of restricted funds that are sometimes called revolving funds, where the amount that is paid out has to be recovered from all of the offices and departments. This particular cost plan is set up to recover costs that are paid out of the general fund, and you're recovering them from all other funds. So the cost, and Ron will go over this in more detail, but the cost of the civil services out of the prosecutor's office and the treasurer's office that handles the county's money, and the Board of County Commissioners, those costs that are eligible to be allocated. All of the costs that are initially paid out of the general fund, where the service is provided to a office and department, and that is still the number one criteria, is your customer has to be a county office or department, not the public. Those costs that are paid initially out of the general fund are then billed out to all of the other funds using a best practices cost allocation method. And so what you'll hear Ron talk about is a recovery to the general fund rather than one of the internal service funds that we've talked about in the other 2 meetings. So with that outlined, I'm gonna turn it over to Ron to go through these slides.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Hey, Ron,
Yeah, I'm most probably listed. What's that?
Do you need, are you handling the PowerPoint, or you need help with that?
Okay, I'm going to leave the meeting on my work computer. I couldn't get any sound, so I'm here. This is my personal, and yeah. So you want me to share my screen for the handout?
Yes, that was a question. I can help you with that if that is not possible from your end.
Oh, I can show. I don't. Okay, I need to share my screen. Okay, so I will click on that and then click share. You see that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So that should actually start. Whoops, up there. Are we good?
Yeah, if you can put it on the slide presentation mode, that will help.
Okay, not slide presentation mode. Oh,
So,
slideshow.
Yeah, start the slideshow.
Okay. Click on slideshow from beginning.
There you go.
PowerPoint has, okay. All right.
Perfect.
Okay, good. I need to do this stuff more often. Okay, so I'm not as experienced at this as Robin is. Robin was introducing the plan, and she knows it about as well as I do. She's helped develop the plan, and she's involved in it every year to some extent. So she gave a good introduction to it, and this is our cost allocation plan for the county. I went back and looked, and we've had annual meetings now. I was able to trace them back till 2017, back to 2000. I couldn't find one in 2019, so we've pretty much had annual meetings for the last few years. Before that, they were just kind of every once in a while. So in 2023, we're going to bill other funds, county funds, almost 7.4 million for these services that Robin was referring to. It's an increase of about 780,000 over 2022. That's a fairly substantial increase. It's almost 12%. There was a reduction in the prior year of around 4 or 5%. So it averages out like to an increase of maybe 5 or 6% over the last 2 years. To me, it's kind of a catch-up year, considering in 2022 it was a reduction. And the kind of a little strange thing, confusing thing about it is you could have some cost shifting, not necessarily increases in costs. And I will explain that more a little bit later because that can affect the amount we're billing out to other funds. But we will bill out 7.4 million with the approval of the Board of County Commissioners in 2023. Cost allocation plan, as Robin was describing, is a rate plan for billing the cost of internal services. As she noted, it's similar to an internal service fund. I kind of categorize these services into 3 buckets to just kind of understand them. One is HR and accounting. Okay, those are, standard internal services you bill out. There's non-standard. Board of County Commissioners and assessor. Are they external? Are they internal? We consider them to be internal in our plan, but you need to think through it and determine where those services end up within your service structure of your organization. In our case here for the county, or in the last category is planning and emergency services. There, we kind of need to justify those and explain those. They're both funded out of the general fund. And what we've been able to do is we've been able to identify programs, departments and funds that really benefit from those services. And we bill those costs out every year too within our cost plan. Service costs are billed to service users. It is at the discretion and direction of the Board of County Commissioners. This is your decision. We've had a full cost plan the last few years, all the way back since 2011. So, but that's your decision. You can say primarily if you make a decision at this point, it's to not bill something because we're kind of at the full cost stage. It would be something in the area of, we don't really think we need to bill out this service for whatever reason, or we really don't feel good about billing this fund for whatever reason. So that would be kind of the primary decision matrix from my standpoint. All costs are billed to all funds except for external service and reimbursed costs. General fund, you have external services. Can you bill out the sheriff as an internal service? Well, no, those are external. So you have to go through and the general fund. Well, this is internal. This is external. And okay, we can bill this out. And where this really kind of comes into play is that if because these costs are funded out of the general fund, financial services, human resources, treasurer's office, if we're providing these services to other funds like solid waste or public health, then you're really subsidizing these services for other funds, and it's really impacting the services you primarily provide out of the general fund, which is law and justice and administration. The funds in the county are all have different funding sources, so that's why this really kind of becomes critical in term to determine where the cost really lies, and to bill those costs to those funds and those departments that are really benefiting from those services. General fund departments are not billed because the general fund is funding the entire cost. We would end up just be billing ourselves. Outside agencies are not billed unless authorized by statute, an interlocal agreement, and Mary for the auditor's office has a couple of those agreements that for services that we provide, and I'll point that out.
So before you go on though, Ron, I just want to expand a little on the second bullet there. The general fund departments are not billed.
Please do.
What Ron has said is absolutely correct. If you build a general fund office like the assessor, where they're paid 100% out of the general fund, then you're just moving accounting codes around. However, I want to make absolutely clear that the portion that is allocable to the assessor or other general fund offices and departments is calculated so that we have a fair and equitable distribution. It's not that they're not calculated or their share isn't known. It's just that we don't move the codes around within the general fund.
Madam Chair,
So Commissioner Menzer has a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Commissioner Menzer.
I don't think this is going to meet the standard of my head not hurting on this one. So
It's complicated.
what I'm a little confused by is, just so I can get oriented before we get too deep, the title of this presentation was Auditor's Office Financial Services. Then the third slide says, services are generally considered standard, HR accounting, non-standard, BoCC assessor, or need to justify.
Right.
So that's not saying that those are things we're billing, you're just saying that those are just.
Those are the things that are billing. So
He just said that we don't bill for assessor or BoCC or.
we do bill for those things.
Yes.
Those are the things that, so any organization bills out HR. It's a no-brainer.
Okay.
We
But
have
that's not
to.
financial services. Why are we calling this financial services?
So this presentation and the cost allocation plan is not just about how to bill out financial services. This is the plan that financial services prepares that bills out all of the internal services that are paid by the general fund.
Okay, that cleans up my first layer of confusion. Now,
Okay.
now keep going about
Keep going.
about these non-standard services and,
All right.
and how they fit into this.
So, if you were to look at Ron's plan, you'd see all of the things that get billed out, and that, yeah, that's almost the last slide. But there are things that are like I was starting to say, there are things that are no-brainer, like HR. HR, it's billed out, it's typical, we have examples of how to bill out HR. The Board of County Commissioners, you've got a little bit of latitude. If you think of the legislative body providing oversight to all of the offices and departments, then we bill out part of the cost based on that, and then you also have the ultimate authority on the budget. So we bill out half of the cost of the board based on budget in each fund. So the allocation method is a little more complicated, and the other complication is under federal rules, the legislative body may not be charged to federal grants. So when you're allocating it out, you have to figure out the cost that would be allocable, but you have to make sure that the charge doesn't go there. So it's non-standard, if you will. It's not just broadly spread for every funding source. And then this need to justify, if you think about planning, for example, it's hard to figure out who is the ultimate customer because the planning department or community long-term planning is writing county code. So who's the customer for that? Is it the public or is it the county, internal to the county? Well, we've done some work in Thurston County to say this work that the planning department does, the customer is internal to the county. You can't run a permit center without having the county code that covers land use. So the work of the planning department benefits CPED, so you can bill some of their time and recover costs from the land use fund. So those two organizations, Planning and Emergency Services, we went through a process, if you will, to determine if any, and we determined yes, some, and then to determine how much and who are their customers to be able to bill out some of that time on the cost plan. So those are completely, we needed to work through how to justify those.
And just to elaborate on that, is emergency services, we get reimbursed from MEDIC 1 for some of the functions.
And the road fund.
And the road fund. So that's really what I think is Robin is stating, is that's a little more prescriptive than the overall, the HR and accounting.
Yeah.
Because there's, and just to give you an example, the director of emergency services provides functions to the MEDIC 1. So MEDIC 1 pays in an allocation method his or her salary. The county manager, the assistant county manager provides services to a broader spectrum. So some of our funds, although there's encompassing within the general fund, but get reimbursed from the road fund, get reimbursed from portions from MEDIC 1. It's allocated throughout all the different funds in order to fund, because we provide internal services.
Right, and the budget office within the commissioner's office is billed out to every fund based on the amount of budget in each fund. Because our customer is the office and department.
Commissioner Edwards had another question.
Yeah, Commissioner Edwards, go ahead, sir.
Got it. So that's a good summary. The point where the confusion came in is.
Hey, Ron,
Yeah.
hold on. Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
My question would be kind of along the lines that Ty brought up, but what criteria is used to determine the percent of cost billed
Is it 2 years?
to, say, the commissioner's office, or
Right.
what? And is it a standard percentage, a dollar amount? Are they all variable? What's the deal there?
That was my next question too, Commissioner.
And that is an excellent question, and my answer has been in other presentations, the answer is that it depends. Yeah,
okay.
it depends, and it depends on what the service is. Because best practices in cost allocation say that the way you allocate the cost, the way you determine the percentage, is got to have some connection to the service that you're billing out. So as I just said, the budget office is billed out, the denominator, if you will, is the total county budget, and the numerator is how much budget is in the road fund. And using that determines the percentage of the budget office cost that's billed to the road fund. On the other hand, the cost for the munis financial system, the denominator is total transactions, and the numerator is how many transactions were done for this particular fund. And for HR, most of HR is billed out, the part that's not covered in the restricted funds that you already reviewed. It's the denominator is the number of FTEs in the county. And the numerator is how many FTEs in your office. That's the percent of that gets billed out. So every type of cost has an allocation method that is specific to it. And then I should also mention that the costs that are billed out on a 2-year lag. So the costs that are billed out in 2023 are the actual amounts that were incurred in 2021. That's the 2-year lag. Ron has those costs when he closes the 2021 fiscal year. That's when he does the cost allocation plan that he's presenting to you today.
So is
Okay. Can I see if I can simplify that
Sure.
and see if I get it right?
I would love for it to be simplified.
Okay, I want to see if I get it right. So the workload could be very similar to an entity with a smaller budget as it is with a larger budget. So conversely, the percentage would be less, I guess. Is that kind of what we're talking about here? That
Kind of what we're talking about.
Okay.
So a program, I hesitate to bring up the lake management district.
Yeah, that's gonna take us off.
Yeah, so I really don't want to
Take us
do
off
that.
track.
Yeah, but it's a great example of a very small fund. Let's use Medic One. Medic One, there are approximately 5 FTEs billed to the Medic One fund. So they're going to get a smaller percentage of the HR costs than, say, the road fund that has 30 FTEs billed to it. And everyone's like that. However, if there's a fund, I'm making this up, it's not true, but if the Medic One fund processed 500 payments and the road fund only processed 200 payments, then their share of the financial system, the cost to run munis, would be much more. It all depends on the allocation method that's being used.
Using the same example, the allocation method for the budget office
Right.
is different. So because Medic One is
Huge
a
budget.
huge budget, so they will contribute more. They will
Yeah.
contribute to HR.
Or the Conservation Futures
Right.
Fund.
So that is,
So the county manager, follow up on Commissioner Edwards, like the county manager, you said,
Right.
and you said the road fund. So how is it determined how much the road fund has to pay for the county manager?
Well, the county manager, because there's not a close nexus, it's like we can't figure out exactly how much time the county manager spends on doing road kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So Ron's gonna correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the county manager's time is billed out half on FTEs and half on budget? Or is it
Close.
all FTEs?
Close. The county manager is FTE.
He's
The
all
Board of County
FTEs.
Commissioners is split between, we've
The
concluded
budget and the
that
FTEs.
budget and human resources. So the
Right.
half is human resources, half is budget. You control the county through who you hire, and you control the county through the budget process. So we split your allocation up between budget and FTEs.
Right, and the county manager, the presumption is the bigger the department, the more time he's gonna spend on that.
Okay,
Yes.
now, that, one more thing, and that's, I get that in terms of the amount that is internal, but how do you figure out like what's external or something? Like the Board of County Commissioners, I'm paid a salary. Half of what I do is not internally oriented. It's going to community events, it's meetings, it's calls with constituents or whatever.
Right, but it's all related to county policy and the policies and the direction that the board sets for the county.
So you're gonna, so
So-
we're completely cost recovered?
Not 100%.
So how do you come up with that percent of, that's less than 100?
So Ron, how do you do that for the commissioners?
Well,
As an
for the board,
example.
for the board, the question and that's a question for you. It's okay. If this is non-standard, that's what we're saying, Board of County Commissioners. And just to step back a bit, that's why this is different than an internal service fund, because whatever is costed to an internal service fund, you bill out. You have to go through this and determine what's external and what's internal. Well, for the Board of County Commissioners, your predecessors concluded prior to you that what is the county in the business for? Well, the county is primarily in the business to protect the public through law and justice. It's primarily in the business to protect the public to protect their health, that kind of thing. So when it comes to the Board of County Commissioners, what you do is you facilitate all those services that we provide to the public, directly to the public. So your costs are billed out actually 100% within the county based on that split. One half is human resources and one half is budget based.
Because everything you do is related to policy. That I believe is the underlying principle for that one.
But that is correct, and you could change that, but then it would reduce what we allocate out in the cost plan. So it is important you feel comfortable with that rationale, because that's actually what's in the cost plan. That's your conclusion, that you primarily provide services internally within Thurston County to enable them to do everything they do
For your
for the citizens and for the public.
Yep, so it's as you can tell, this plan is especially complex. And Ron and Maggie and his team there in financial services put a lot of work into this. It's reviewed by the offices and departments that are billed out, if you will. And then the offices and departments that get billed, they also have an opportunity to review how it was calculated. But it's a very complicated plan.
For
Yes.
Commissioner McGeeh's benefit, this is the fourth time I'm hearing this, and probably the first time I've been able to understand enough to ask better questions. I was probably just dumbfounded the first couple of times, but this is like really tricky.
Yes, but you're getting more into the weeds here, which is good. I mean, so we've had this several years in a row, and you're asking much more detailed, specific questions on how we allocate and compute this stuff out, which is good, because this is your plan. So to the extent you ask tough questions, it's good, because the plan originates from you.
Right, the board by law must authorize this allocation plan.
Okay,
Commissioner Messer, I was feeling pretty confident the last couple of days as we had those budget presentations, and this has just brought me back down to earth again.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure it out.
I feel for you, because I mean, if I had a broad range of authority and somebody brought up indirect costs, I'd say, what the heck is that? I would be confused too, believe me. So it's just, I spend most of my time doing this. So it's, pretty normal and logical to me. But yes, I understand where you're coming from.
And then
So I think
Commissioner Edwards had a question really quick, Ron. Commissioner Edwards, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. What I'm trying to put together from this presentation, which I think Ron's doing a good job explaining all this, but I'm trying to figure out why the almost 12% increase, I guess, if everything is relatively similar than it's been in the past. I mean, we're talking almost about the, I don't know, retail inflation index or something there. I don't know how the increase came about so much if the job activities stayed similar.
So let's go to this last table, maybe to kind of explain that. So remember I said it was 780,000 for the increase. I just zoomed to this last table. And so we're billing 7.4 million in 2023. We billed 6.6 million. We're billing 6.6 million in 2022. There's that $780,000 increase. The plan is 21 million. Okay, that's what we allocate out. Now the key one here is this 13,831,000. That's general fund and agency funds. So more than, what is that? About 2/3, 60% of what we allocate, we don't bill, because most of the services are provided to the general fund. So you can have some cost shifting. I mean, for example, if the prosecuting attorney spends more time on the solid waste fund than, let's say, on the sheriff, compared to the prior year, we're going to bill more out because we don't bill their time out for the sheriff to the general fund, because all this is paid out of the general fund. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but hopefully it'll kind of help explain it. That's kind of the key thing about the plan. It's quite a bit more. It's kind of triple.
I think that's good. I get the gist of it. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
That's a good question.
There's also the fact that in 2022, we were billing out 2020 costs, and a lot of the costs went down due to COVID.
So we didn't do much in 2020.
So in 2022 compared to 21, the costs went down, and now they're coming back up closer to normal.
So one of the key things about the plan, though, is this thing here. We are, no, let's see, where is that? Users have the option of requesting a general fund subsidy from the BoCC. So we bill everything out to all these funds, and if there is the funds, departments can always come to the Board of County Commissioners and request a subsidy if they feel they cannot pay what is being billed out to them.
They can request it, Ron, but the board generally does not. Every fund needs to be able to cover their interfund costs. So
Yes.
they can ask, but let's not dwell on that.
And most of those funds are wealthy funds. I mean,
Many of them are,
yeah,
yes.
solid waste, road fund and medic one, they're not in the position to ask for money for subsidies. I mean,
That's right. So I will note, though, one of the places where you see a huge increase in cost is in the public health department. And I think that if Ron goes back to the slides, that you'll hear a little more about that.
Should we go back here?
Yep.
So we've kind of covered a lot of this through this discussion. So here's one we were kind of here. So service costs are assigned to users by activity drivers. There was some discussion on this for payment vouchers, is AP invoices, that kind of thing. So we have to figure out what is a primary activity driver that we can use to allocate this cost out. Costs must be billed equitably, as was noted. Actual costs are billed in a 2-year lag. That was noted. Users have the option of requesting, we noted that too. So, oops, sorry. Okay, user funds are set detailed statements. Now, from my standpoint, this is kind of the primary control. It may not appear that way, but it is, because the money that comes into the general fund, it comes out of other funds. So there's always, they really don't care a whole lot if their costs go down. They do care if their costs go up. So we send out detailed billing statements that address, that have the service, the program, the allocation factor. And if there's any major changes, we note the reason for the change on the statement. And that's the control, because if you have to be able to justify this to the fund you're billing the cost to. And if you sit down with them and you can't justify it, then that's, you know, that the whole thing doesn't work. So you got to be able to justify it. You got to be able to explain it. And you got to let them know the reason for the change. It doesn't mean we don't make changes to the plan for the assumptions at times, but that's always done very cautiously and carefully, because you don't just want to change it for the fund or department that's complaining. You want to make sure that any change you implement is equitable, and it is something that is reasonable to do. Users have a right to question and request. Yeah, so there are no current disputable issues at this point in time. We sent the bills out a couple days ago, so we'll see if that changes. Now, public health got hit pretty hard, so we'll see what their responses are for notable reasons. I mean, their activities went way up, so their support services went way up. We tried to moderate that as much as possible to the extent that we could. And we'll just go from there and see what their response is to those billings. So that's pretty much it. We've went in more detail than we ever have in these board briefings today that I remember. So, which is really good. We are asking for tentative BoCC approval, or alternatively, any direct on desired changes by the BoCC. This is normally the first slide. This shows it by the services we're allocating out.
Hey Rob, hold on a second. Commissioner Mason got a question.
Sure.
So if the board, so one of the things that's listed here is planning. So when the board was talking about adding 3 or 4 planners so we can get more applications, that gets billed out?
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
And you just said in part, how was that determine how much planning work is billable?
So the first thing we do in planning is figure out how much of it is covered by external grants.
Okay.
You do not bill out external grants. So because that would be like double dipping, if you will. If the cost can be billed somewhere else, that's the first thing you do.
Okay.
So all of the remaining costs then, after you pull out what was billed out to grants, I think everything else in planning pretty much gets billed out through this plan. So it's
By what metric?
Well, it's based on what they're working on. If they're working on land use code, then it's billed to the permit center. If they're working on water code, then it's billed to
Okay, so
the
these are
water.
the planners that are working on the policies, not the applications of citizens that are.
Correct.
Building
Correct.
department versus planning.
Correct. This is long-term planning.
Yeah, the permit fees are.
People who are writing the county code.
So only long-term planning is subject to this allocation plan
Correct.
because they're working like the board in a sense on broad scale.
Right.
I'm glad you asked that question. It's a good clarifying question.
Yeah. Because the people at the desk are being billed to a restricted fund that
Yes,
is
it's a fee.
intended, and their customer is the public, quite plainly.
We bill most of planning. You can see that by the numbers. So their cost, net cost, as Robin noted, we subtract out all the costs that were reimbursed. Their net allocable cost was $1.5 million. So we are billing out most over 2/3, I think, of that, $1,091,000 in 2023. Now compare that to the assessor. The assessor's cost was 4.9 million at the top of the table. We're only billing out 345,000 because most of the services of the assessor's office are provided to other jurisdictions. From my standpoint, they're primarily an intergovernmental service fund.
That's right.
And so, but it's low because it's just, they provide services to the general fund, but remember, we don't bill the general fund. We do bill out for the assessor's office, the assessment services they provide to roads and Medic One, and I believe also to conservation futures, because there's property taxes levied for those three funds.
Right.
So there's really sizable differences between what is a cost and what is billed out.
So looking at planning, 1.5, but it's gonna be 1.1. That difference is because, that's not because of grants, because that's taken out before costs. That's because of things that aren't,
No,
that are
that's,
general fund
the
costs.
$500,000 is paid for through grants.
Oh, that is, so
Right.
1.5.
It's a little bit different than that. The $500,000, 1.5 actually excludes grants. With the difference, the $500,000 reduction is we've concluded that about $500,000 of services are actually provided back to the general fund.
Right. Okay.
And since we don't bill the general fund, that's the
There you go.
portion that's
Thank
excluded.
you, that's part of what makes this very complicated. When you look at the changes though, the amount of change, the commissioner's office went up quite a bit because we added FTEs. The emergency management, we added an FTE. Financial services added FTEs, quite a few FTEs.
So the catch though is you have to be a little careful because like a 238,000 increase for financial services. Our cost didn't really increase that much. It increased a little, but remember there's cost shifting because to the extent costs shift to billable and non-billable funds in the cost plan, you'll have increases and decreases. So what is really not on here, and I was thinking about adding another column, which is just the increases in costs, total allocated costs from the prior year. What this increase is just the billable cost off to the right. It kind of gives you an idea, but it's still a little bit different what the actual cost increase to that service is.
Right. And again, you see on the next page, the big shift was to public health. Although not a lot of offices went down, Ron, so it's not.
No, not
a
many.
shift.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we have a few that are managed by the Board of County Commissioners and by HR, and they went down. No one else went down. Okay.
Right.
Oh, by the way, you look at that 42,000 at the bottom under 2023. That's the amount we bill out. That's the amount Mary bills out to those two outside agencies, Area Agency on Aging and Regional Planning.
Right.
Orca was the customer until this year, and they decided to provide their own payroll and AP services internally. So we provide payroll and AP services to those two remaining two agencies, auditor's office.
All right.
That's pretty much it. But I have any more questions or comments? My gosh, we've had more questions and than we've had in the last 4 or 5 years, which is great. So any more
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think Ron's done a good job explaining the whole thing. Like Commissioner Menzer said, it's all starting to make sense.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
I think I'm good, thank you.
So I will ask the board for, give direction to continue with this proposal.
Thumbs up, so we
Yeah.
can
So
go with this.
or you need additional information to make that, provide direction later?
Commissioner Edwards,
I'm good with it now. I'm good.
Commissioner Menzer?
Okay.
And you, Commissioner Mejia?
You have a thumbs up for me.
I just say with Ron, I mean, it's like, this is so complicated and sort of artful in a sense that I would be a lot less comfortable, if you didn't have the handle on it that you showed that you have today, and I understand that, you know, you're giving us a level of confidence in this is not the kind of thing that I would easily have confidence in. If there was a disjointed presentation and I was getting conflicting, I'd be like, whoa, stop the presses. But it seems like you've got a good handle on this, and we've been doing it for a while, so.
Hey, look at you. There were some tough questions that we had to answer today. So I can tell by the questions that were being asked that you're really getting into the detail on how it works and how it's allocated out and how it's really computed and that kind of thing. So that's a really good thing. So
Yeah, I would also add that our cost plan has been audited by the state auditor, and it has gotten a green light every time. So
Flying
we
colors.
know it's solid.
All right, that's important
Yes.
too, thank you.
All right, so you
Thank
would
you.
stop sharing your screen, please, Ron?
Pardon?
You can stop sharing your screen?
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. Stop sharing my screen.
Yeah,
Okay. New share. Pause share.
pause, stop share.
Like
Or
pause. No.
not, that's okay.
We're about to adjourn anyways, no
Yeah,
worries.
there we go.
Okay, so thank you so much,
Okay.
Commissioners. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.